I am a first-time homeowner who's been living at this house for about 3 years now. When me and my spouse first moved in, I could tell that our neighbor Bill had some issues. He was staring at us the whole time we were looking at the house and had an attitude with our realtor unprovoked. He is an oldish man, lives alone with his wife. I think he's on disability and he is retired, so he has a lot of spare time. His voice sounds like early Kyler from Squidbillies. At first I figured he was just paranoid or crotchety or something, and I thought he would stop being weird once he spoke to us. But it has never stopped, and the behavior has escalated in the last few months. It started with him following me around outside just to stare at me while I did yard work. I'd start mowing the front of the house, and he comes out to sit or stand on his front porch and stare at me, direct eye contact, head facing me, full attention towards me. After finishing the front, I'd go to the backyard, and he'd go to his backyard to stand on his deck and stare at me. Initially, Bill pretends like he's doing something. He'd come down and wipe his satellite dish with Windex while making eye contact with me, or pretend to try starting his broken lawnmower while staring at me. Or sweep like 3 leaves off his deck over the course of 15 minutes while staring at me. But eventually he always drops the pretense and just stands there looking. I used to talk to him when he came out, but I decided to start ignoring him after he treated me very condescendingly and disrespectfully one day. Another thing he does is he'll go outside to the street in front of my house to pick up trash, making sure to look at my house every few seconds. I see him do this from my window when I'm outside. I had to get reflective film so that he couldn't see into my house. The trash he's picking up is stuff like sticks and leaves and thatch. Occasionally he'll pick up a plastic bottle, but he's not being thorough or anything. Plus he has to walk downhill to pick it up, and I've never seen him walk the other direction in all 3 years I've lived here. I spoke to another neighbor, Chuck, who lives across the street. He's a good guy, and I met him when he came over to voluntarily assist me digging up and installing a French drain. He made a point of telling me, "We're not all bad neighbors." Chuck told me that Bill had harassed him before, and called him very demonetizable words, oh yes, and all kinds of nonsense over something petty. Chuck called the police on him, but nothing came of it. This was a few years ago, though. Another neighbor who has moved away also told me that Bill had yelled obscenities at him when their dog got loose. When Bill and I were on good terms, he told me he threatened to shoot their dog if it went on his property again. Some months ago, Bill's dog died, and I think he has become more spiteful and miserable than ever. There was an incident where my partner was working in the front yard and he came outside, sat fully facing them, sideways from his house in an unusual spot, and started clipping his toenails towards our house. I guess my partner didn't give him a sufficient reaction, because he brought a BB gun outside and started loading it while staring at them. We actually reported this to the police, but nothing came of it. Hopefully, at least they have a record of these incidents. But I'm not so sure. We paid for a survey because we wanted to put in a fence, and the survey people came out and left orange flags on the 4 corners of our property. When we woke up the next day, the orange flags on the side bordering his property were gone. There are many, many more incidents. There's something weird every week. But those are the highlights from the past couple of years, and things have gotten worse. In August, my father was diagnosed with liver cancer, and he and I are trying to repair our very damaged relationship. So my patience for Bill has been very thin these days. After a day where Bill followed me around 4 times over the course of 3 hours of me working, and egregiously staring from his car the day before, I finally had enough and snapped at him. That conversation went like this. "Why are you always staring at me?" "Why are you talking to me?" "I don't understand why you're always staring at me. Don't you have anything better to do than follow me around from the front to the back and over? Don't you have anyone you can talk to?" "Shut up." "Come on, man, live with some dignity. What you're doing is creepy and I effing hate it." I walked away after that to the backyard. He didn't follow immediately, but he was back at it the next day. Since this conversation, he has started to deliberately harass me, and is continuing to escalate. He began by opening and closing his window over and over whenever I walked between our houses, or doing something really noisy and useless to get my attention, like obvious fake coughing, clearing his throat, jingling his keys loudly, etc., and then closing the window. Most of the time I don't look, but when I do, I see his silhouette in his window staring at me. Lately he has started adding verbal abuse, uttering loudly under his breath, calling me a piece of crap, an idiot, and other unpleasant things. On Saturday I was doing yard work, and he was doing his window-opening nonsense and muttering insults. But this time he came outside to his deck to fake sweep, continuing to mutter slurs at me under his breath. So I told him to come say it to my face. What followed was possibly the most infuriating argument I've ever had with a human being. After badly pretending to be surprised by what I said, he completely denied ever doing anything to follow or harass me, and went as far as accusing me of hearing voices in my head and playing mind games with him. I really lost it at him when he started trying to lecture me about what I told him the last time we talked, and started shouting over him. He even tried to gaslight me into believing that he had never followed me the first time I confronted him, and that I yelled at him unprovoked. He's a terrible liar. He literally can't even stop himself from smiling when he says this stuff. I'm not proud of myself, but I lost my cool here, and I went on an admittedly hurtful rant about how he only does this because he has nobody else who cares about him. Fast forward to the end. He called me stupid and said I had a lot to learn, and backed up his own intelligence by claiming he went to college. I immediately called his bluff and quickly asked him what he got his degree in. It looked like he tried to start answering, but the words failed to come out. I started laughing uncontrollably as I realized how stupid and pointless this conversation was, and that I never wanted to lower myself to this nonsense again. So I got back to work and started saying something about needing to be better than this, but he walked away while I wasn't looking so that it would seem like I was talking to myself. Since then, I've avoided doing any yard work, and I've been sleeping like 5 hours a night because I'm wired all day and disappointed in myself for failing to ignore him. I plan on getting a serious home security camera system, planting some privacy trees and shrubs, and going back to ignoring him, but I feel like I have no options to truly hold him accountable for what he's doing. Do we really have to accept his behavior, or has he crossed a line? 2. My partner and I have been living in our home for almost 5 years. A nice piece of land with a couple of homes, the landlord in the back, plenty of space, a huge yard right in the middle of some farmland. My partner and I have 2 children, age 6 and 2. About 2 years ago, we had a couple move into the place next to ours. At first, everything was great, friendly, neighborly, all good. At some point a few months ago, things changed, drastically. He has always thrown out that he's bipolar and sometimes doesn't take his meds, and that's why he slams his door sometimes. Always make sure to add that he would never hit or hurt or direct it at his girlfriend, though. The door slamming was okay for a bit. We couldn't hear anything inside. But now it's louder, more frequent. He's screaming curse words at the top of his lungs, so loudly that even my kids can hear it inside. He hits the metal roof overhanging the porch, he gets in his car and revs it and peels out fast. And now there have been several confrontations between him and my partner. We just went through Hurricane Milton here, and our yard is a disaster. We were cleaning up our part of the yard and even helping cut down the tree that fell in their house. We did have a very small fire burning because, we live in the country, and we always burn our yard debris. He came out of his house, looked at me and scoffed, and I said, "You want us to stop cutting the tree?" He scoffed again and looked at my partner, went back inside and slammed the door. My 2-year-old asked me, "He mad?" So he noticed. A few minutes later he came out, with no civility, just straight up screaming at my partner, "Can you put that crap out before my effing house burns down?" And went back inside and slammed the door again. Started screaming and throwing things around in his house. He acted like that in front of my small child. We have burned fires before, and it was never an issue. And they have used the fire pit we built for fires before, too. They throw their cardboard and burnables in there, too. Last night my partner came inside and said the neighbor started yelling at him about how we were so inconsiderate because there's ashes on his car from 2 days ago. My partner offered to pay to have it cleaned, and the neighbor just screamed so loud at this point he woke up my son and me, and I swear my partner was about to lose it. But he didn't. He just came inside and ranted to me. We are going to start videotaping any interaction with them and speak to our landlord about it. But other than that, what are our options? My children have now witnessed his behavior, and my oldest won't even go outside anymore. We don't go outside in the morning anymore, so we don't wake them up. We make sure our kids don't get too loud. We keep our yard clean and stay to ourselves. At this point, I'm scared to go outside. And I think my favorite part is that I am the one that started the fire, but I bet he wouldn't speak to me that way. So why should he speak to my partner that way? I'm just at a loss now, and I don't know what to do. Hellfreezer's note. Well, cameras are always the way to go with this, so document and record everything that's happening. Don't tiptoe around on your own property. Don't go out of your way to make extra noise or anything, but just live your life normally. These are normal neighbor sounds that everybody makes, so if you're not doing anything ridiculous or anything egregious, there's no reason you should have to walk on eggshells for this man. Let him get upset, document it, record it, report it, and eventually something will have to be done about it. 3. I've tried everything. Of course I've talked with these people. That was my very first line of defense against the last 2 years of outright disrespect. I'm 29, and 2 years ago my partner and I built our first home. The first 6 months were what any first-time homebuyer would expect, and then they moved in next door. I have 2 dogs and a cat, a fenced-in yard where my dogs would run free and play every day, and we would watch the sunset. But our neighbors decided they wanted to have a doggy door for their backyard. For background, part of the reason I bought a house is because one of my 2 dogs is dog reactive. This is something we have worked on a lot, but has become worlds more difficult with the doggy door my neighbors have. My neighbors open their doggy door at their leisure, and their 3 yappy barking dogs come hauling butt out to rage at my fence line. This usually results in me having to rip my reactive dog off the fence and put him inside away from the stress. Of course, I'm totally aware that their dogs must potty as well. I started waking up 20 minutes earlier to avoid them in the mornings. I walked straight up to their doorstep in the beginning of all this and discussed that my dog is reactive and only goes out for small intervals of time for potty and goes back in the house. If they could please check before swinging their door open. But instead, they will entirely leave their house with the doggy door open, so when I get back home, I am unable to take my dogs out. And even when they are home, and they can hear their dogs in the backyard, they will allow them to stay pestering myself and all the other neighbors with their yappers. This has happened at all hours of the day. Once their dogs woke me up at 4 a.m., as they came out in their barking rage, even when my dog is nowhere near outside. I have contacted my HOA, Animal Control. We have told them countless times over the fence, please check and please lock your doggy door when you're done. All of our pleas have gone unanswered. Yesterday, their dogs were out for 3 hours barking at my fence with someone home, and I finally had to let my dog go potty. And I have to take him out on a leash so the pestering neighbor dogs don't come out and ruin his smaller and smaller intervals outside. My dogs no longer get to play in their yard. This is my family home, just me, my partner, and our pets. My dogs never bark at the fence or anything. The only thing that has ever worked is using my water hose to keep their dogs away from my fence, as well as my own dog, once they all do start, usually unexpectedly going at it. My dog has ripped his mouth and nose on the fence trying to defend his little plot of land he no longer gets to be free in. The neighbors have an in-roommate style situation. 5 grown adults that do all the things a neighbor shouldn't do, sit out front with their music blasting in their cars, parking all up and down the street in front of the other neighbors' houses, don't care for their lawn, Several of them have criminal records, one for improper recording of another individual, twice. The owner of the house, his father, who also has a good criminal record of countless DUIs, has just become one of the board members of the HOA. Once, during an altercation with them, they threatened to kill my dogs, and I called the police and have a police report of the threat. This resulted in them putting a camera facing my backyard. Another altercation while I wet their dogs through the fence, they called the police on us, and the police told us wetting their dogs through the fence was well within our legal rights. I have sent countless videos to animal control, but here in Texas they're flooded with too much work already. I feel like I'm running out of options. Seeing my dogs suffer has made my first home less lovable for me. Even my older, non-reactive dog is so stressed by the barking and unpredictability that he won't potty when they're outside. I usually have to take my younger dog on a leash, just like the apartment days. I think my only choice left is to move to another area of town. My area has too many uneducated animal abusers. This breaks my heart because we worked really hard for this house and are being ran out by a bunch of criminals with no decorum. I am angry and stay in constant fear that they would hurt my animals because they clearly have no love for their own. I have seen their dogs matted with no collar for years. You think they wouldn't slip a treat with rat poison over my fence? The owner of the house already is stuck working at Family Dollar even though he has a bachelor's degree because of his record. I do not wish them well. I am no longer sorry for them. People who intentionally hurt animals and provoke those who live around them and have never done anything but try to reason with them are horrible, nasty people. And these people make choices, become leaders of HOAs, work next to us, live next to us all, and that makes me sick. This is my rant. I had to get this somewhere because I have suffered for too long. 4. Just thought I'd share a weird encounter I had this weekend. I'm a 22-year-old male. Grandpa's neighbor is probably in her late 30s. I'm staying with him for a while because of a roommate situation. His property is a few acres, and the neighbor's is a lot smaller. They are separated by trees. My grandpa has a dog, an old German Shepherd. He's gotten sensitive to noises lately. Here's the problem. Neighbor is a Halloween fanatic. My grandpa said she gets her Halloween decor up in late August, but the issue isn't the decor. It's that she's got this odd soundscape. The soundscape includes a fireworks and gunshot type cluster of bangs that happen every so often. Given the distance between the homes, we shouldn't be able to hear any of it. Anyway, she runs it from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. They don't get trick-or-treaters or anything in this area. Houses are too far apart, have long private drives. So all of this is for herself. My grandpa is too nice and conflict avoidant to do anything about it. But I feel so bad for the dog. After a day of the sounds triggering the dog, I went over and I introduced myself. It was my first time meeting her, so I didn't want to immediately launch into my complaint. I went along with some conversation to build rapport. She was extremely chatty at first, asked a lot of questions about me, tried to guess my ethnicity. I have a racially ambiguous face, and she wanted to prove that she could read my features or whatever. From there, she started telling me which celebrities I remind her of. I haven't heard of any of them. And then she started talking about horror movies. I couldn't get a word in. I had to interrupt her. I explained about our dog. Started with, maybe you could consider using a different soundscape or turning it down. As soon as I brought this topic up, she got all cold. Her whole demeanor towards me changed. But she did agree she would turn it down. She didn't. So I turned up to her door for the second time, yesterday. This is when it got weird. She answered the door in a full costume, and was putting on a character that she didn't feel necessary to drop while talking to me. I tried to let her know I'm going to be making a noise complaint if she doesn't adjust her soundscape. I asked her how come she didn't turn it down. She ignored this by telling me I look like I have a delicious liver. Ugh. It's hard to express how frustrating it was. I said nothing. I just stared at her, irritated, hoping she'd drop the act. Instead of getting serious, she kept the weird voice going and told me, "Lower your eyebrow. Why are you so grumpy?" She also tried to reach out slowly to touch my face or something. I just turned around and left. This woman was still in her bloody character. She said something after me, but I was not able to make it out enough to quote it here. I got home and made a noise complaint. Cops took my statement. They went over and talked with her. No more soundscape, peace and quiet. Today she left a dead bird on the doorstep. 5. I've been at my new apartment since April of this year and met 2 of my neighbors. Neighbor A and Neighbor B. Neighbor A is literally next door, and she has a son and a boyfriend. When we first met Neighbor A, they were honestly really sweet. Met her kid and her mom. First incident. Around this time, I was working night shift, and my fiancé and his best friend were playing a game and listening to music. Now, they were playing off of a soundbar. Apparently, the music was too loud, so she knocked on the door and my fiancé ran downstairs to open it, but no one was there. A few minutes go by, and there is another knock at the door, and it's the cops. So the boys talked to the cop, and the cop basically said, "Be considerate and grow up." Next day, we get a note saying, "Hey, we didn't have a choice but to call the cops." And at the bottom of the note, it says, "Please stop parking in front of their home." Her messages and email and verbatim from my leasing managers that we do not have designated parking, so that was the last incident. The leasing office kept sending out texts and emails about this. The second incident. We get another note on our door basically saying, "Hey, we need you to stop parking in front of our door. We've asked multiple times to stop doing it." I didn't retaliate. I did not write a letter back. Again, this is after the leasing office has said we don't have assigned parking through text and email and verbal. Third incident. The note was really sassy and rude, and she said, "This goes to everyone in that apartment." So we read the note, so the fiancé and his best friend retaliate and send a note back. 20 minutes later, a cop comes out, and it was a woman this time. The reason for the cop coming out was because the neighbors said that our note was a terroristic threat. We said, "If you keep harassing us and putting notes on our doors about a parking spot that's not reserved, it's gonna get ugly." At that point, my fiancé saw how upset I was getting about this, so he took matters in his own hands and retaliated with that response. Before I get into that part, mind you, we have never verbally spoken to my neighbor except for when we first moved in and she was being nice. She has literally written me note after note every time we park in a certain spot. The only reason why we haven't spoken to her is because, 1, she will take it in a different way. So the woman cop is asking what's going on, and my fiancé answers the door, and she's being so sweet and understanding. She apologizes for it getting this far and she left, but she wants to avoid doing any type of pressing charges. The fourth and most recent incident. Today I had to take my fiancé to work. We leave the house around 7:50 a.m. We get outside, and we see some type of rock substance on my car, so I pick it up and touch it, and my fiancé is like, "That's cat litter," so I stop touching it. Immediately I lean down and smell it, and it smells like cat urine. So I immediately know who did it, and it's obvious that Neighbor A did it, as she has 2 cats in the home. So I take pictures of everything, and I head up to my leasing office after I drop off my fiancé. I'm very close with my leasing managers, and I already have a paper trail with them about this, and they were in shock about it. So I call my local sheriff's department and update my police report that I already had on her. They told me that since your car is now involved and she actually did something to it, we're going to have to get dispatch on the line for them to come out. So the cops come out, asked me what's going on, and everything the leasing office gave them, emails, notes of everything that I've been sending in. They looked at my car, and they saw the leftover kitty litter on it. The deputy said, "Let me go see if she's home." He goes to her apartment number, and they talk. Then he calls me and says, "These are your 2 options. 1, you can either talk to her and y'all can settle it out, or you can request a warrant for her arrest." Because the reason for saying that is because I see the cat litter that was on your car in the cat's cage. I was like, "Great, that's fantastic. I'll go ahead and call the court and see if we can get everything taken care of." The courthouse is saying since I don't have solid footage of her doing it, it would be a fail case, basically. At this point, I have my leasing office trying to do what they can, and I've called the law on her as well. Without the footage, is there anything I can do that would help me out? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours, episode 16. And thanks a lot to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And do support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. Every dollar helps keep the channel going a little bit longer. Okay. No other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, if you could change your eye color, what would you change it to? I think I'd change mine to a nice vibrant purple. I know that will shock some of you. But if not purple, it'd probably like a neon green, just something unusual and striking. I think would look quite good on me. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And I think this was about your current favorite TV shows of the moment. And let's see. Today's answer comes from Justin Springston. I'm loving The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. It's pretty good. Thank you very much for your answer, Justin. I think the title of that show is going to get longer every season. It's currently The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. I wonder what it's going to be next season. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.